joined now by senior producer from NFL Films, also the host of the ESPN NFL Matchup show, Greg Cosell, making his weekly visit a little bit earlier than usual on a Wednesday because we don't have a show on Thursday or Friday. We're out of here for the bye week. But, Greg, we are going to spend a very short amount of time on the Cardinals-Bills game because I don't know if fans want to hear about it anymore in light of the way it ended. But
it was a great game, though. It was
a great game. I do want to get your thoughts, though, on that final drive by Josh and the offense where Cole Beasley pretty much put the team on his back after John Brown had gone out with an ankle injury. Obviously, Diggs made the big catch at the end, but just the exploits of one Cole Beasley specifically, Greg, just from what you see on film from him and the freedom to improvise on his routes.
Yeah, well, he's one of those guys that's just so good working out of the slot. I don't know, you guys may know more. It's always tough to tell watching tape what kind of freedom you have on routes that are quote-unquote option or choice routes. Steve, you may know that better than I, but he is so good at working against the leverage of those slot corners and then either breaking outside or breaking inside. My guess is he does have freedom, and obviously that takes time with the quarterback to understand how that's going to work because you have to read the same thing. But he is so good at that. He had one, I can't remember which one it was, where he literally stopped on a dime and broke outside, and that's his game. I mean, obviously the touchdown, I believe that was man coverage, and I believe Peterson was on him, and Peterson kind of passed him on thinking maybe someone was going to cut his route, but no one did. So that theoretically was a bust. But Beasley is a fun guy to watch. He just has such a great feel and such a great understanding of the leverage of the defenders.
Now, before we get to the final drive, I want to hear your thoughts on how effective they were, and Beasley and Steph Diggs coming through in a big way. The one thing I know you don't look at the games in the terms I'm about to put them, but the Bills have been accused by their fans, and it's borne out in the statistics of coming out after halftime and stinking the place up on offense. They cannot, their halftime adjustments, either plus or minus or whatever, they can't move it. They did score a third quarter touchdown with about 9 minutes to go in the third quarter this week, but they have really taken a bath in the point differential in the third quarter. Do you have any thoughts on that as to why that is? Do you notice anything?
I mean, I don't necessarily look at games like that, so it's hard for me to really have an answer for that. So it's I really don't, Steve. I wish I did. Obviously, it's something you want to work on because that first drive of the third quarter is viewed by pretty much every coach as really important, particularly if you're getting the ball first. But I don't have any tactical reason as to why that's the case.
All right, let's talk about that final drive. The Bills came through. They needed it. I mean, what a great drive it was. I mean, they converted on a bunch of third downs. Cole Beasley was enormous in that drive. And, of course, Steph Diggs, that last throw by Josh to Steph Diggs from the angle we were watching, that was a big-time throw.
Big-time throw. I mean, it was almost like a combination, almost like seven, sail corner route. I mean, right. I wasn't exactly sure how they would call that route, but, I mean, he beat Peterson. I mean, Allen made an excellent throw because one thing I look at on throws like that is when the quarterback starts his delivery, because you don't have a lot of time. You can't wait to see what Diggs is going to do there. Otherwise, you're going to throw it to him 4 yards out of bounds. So he starts his delivery, and you know this, Steve. He starts his delivery before he even breaks. And obviously, if you're throwing it to the sideline, you're not worried about the interception. But that was just a big-time throw and a really good catch. To me, on a play like that, taking nothing away from Steph Diggs, so I did a piece on in the matchup show last week, and I think is a great, great receiver. I think that play is made more by the throw. I don't think there's a lot of room for a throw like that, and you've got to put it right there.
Yeah, and Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator, actually said that was a play that they had only put in on Thursday leading up to that game. They ran it to the other side of the field, and they ran it against a different coverage than he said that they got in practice. But he said it worked for them well on Thursday, so they decided to put it in, and lo and behold, it becomes the pass that many thought won the game for them.
Well, it's funny you say that because that coverage, I'm almost positive, was cover one, which is man coverage with a single high safety. If I remember the play, I'm not looking at it right now, obviously, as we're speaking, but it would strike me that when he said they put it in for a different coverage, I think that was a play you'd probably put in for zone because I think it had a smash concept to it, Steve, if I think correctly.
They were in a
had
cluster
the route
on the
underneath
inside.
it. So they probably put it in more as a zone concept, which is why when I saw it, I was trying to exactly figure out what the route was, because that would be my guess. It was put in to attack zone.
Yeah, Diggs was the inside of a cluster formation tight to the line, it's kind of irrelevant what those other outside guys did, because if it was cover zero, everything changes anyway. But you're right that Diggs was probably not the guy they thought was going to get that ball.
No, because it was a 1-by-3 set, meaning that there were 3 wide receivers to the field, and the tight end was a nub tight end, a line of scrimmage tight end on the other side. So you're right. Diggs was the inside slot to trips.
We saw, Greg, that Coach McDermott recognized it as a bye-week priority to address. He feels they need more consistent production in the run game. I think he fully believes that, the identity of this offense is Josh in the passing game, but it's clear that he wants a little more balance to their offense, and he feels that they do not have it right now going into the bye. They've been a more successful team running to the left than to the right. Their line's been in flux from guard to guard all season long. What would you say they're trying to uncover there to give them answers to be more productive?
Well, I'd answer this question 2 ways. I'll start with the idea as to why I think they need to run more. I think Josh Allen is really improving. I think he has a chance to be special. But if you look at the last 2 weeks, one was a victory, one was a loss, he's been under a lot of duress. I mean, he was consistently under duress versus the Cards. Their multiple pressure schemes had an impact, I thought, on the overall efficiency of Allen in the pass game. And we saw the week before, I believe, wasn't he sacked 7 times?
Yeah, and I know on the season, Greg, they've been blitzed at the third highest rate all season long.
So it's not just that you want to run, and we'll talk about that in a sec, but it's very difficult, no matter how special your quarterback is, and we know that Josh can be just really special, making plays outside of structure, improvising, beating pressure, getting away from the pass rush. He can do all those things, but it's a tremendous burden on both your offensive line and just your offense as a whole to have your quarterback drop back 40, 45, 50 times on a weekly basis. It's too hard in this league to do that and be consistent. So now the run game, I guess in a bye week, what you have to decide, and this is the way I would view it, I'm not a coach, but I think you have to decide, number one, your offensive line, how you feel they best block. Are they best in the zone run game? Are they best in the gap scheme run game? What do you want your foundation to be? Not every run is the same run, no matter what you think you're best at, but you'd like to have a foundation that you feel, hey, we can line up and we feel good that, let's say it's going to be the zone run game, Chris, to the left. If that's our foundation, we want to feel that, hey, when we line up and call that, we can get 4 or 5 yards, and maybe once in a while you get 8 or 9, and once in a while you get 20. So you have to decide based on your personnel and your scheme what's best, and then start there and then work off that. But I really believe, as they do from what you just said, that they need more volume in the run game and more productivity in the run game.
Can you give us a rundown, starting with, and I don't know if you know the names off the top of your head, Deion Dawkins, Cody Ford, Mitch Morris, Brian Winters, Darrell Williams, all these guys, Ty Nsekhe, Brian Bates,
right,
Ike Butker. Give us a rundown on where you see these guys falling into the talent level of where they should be, because they've been shuffled so many times.
That's an issue too.
It's hard for us to even get a handle on who plays well, because we don't know if they're playing well because they're in a new position or an old position.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I chart each offensive lineman on every play, so I'm not going to try to say anything I don't know. I think that the shuffling of an O-line definitely hurts your run game. You know this, Steve, because what's the O-line about? The O-line is about cohesion and unity, particularly in a zone run game where everybody has to work together. You work to the first level and climb to the second level. That's all about cohesive, synchronization, working together. I think in the gap scheme run game, which is, a man concept, it's a little different because you have the double team to play side, and ideally you can move people. So maybe that's their best run. But I can't sit here in all honesty and tell you how each guy has played. But the number one thing, and hopefully injuries don't become a factor going forward. Hopefully there's no COVID issues, and they can get the 5 coming back from the bye that they want to play going down the stretch.
Talking to Greg Cosell, senior producer of NFL Films. And Greg, two players on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills that have come under fire from fans are two former first-round draft choices in Ed Oliver and Tremaine Edmonds. They don't see those two players making the same kind of splash plays that they made from time to time last season. Some people have attributed it to the fact that, you're missing a player like Star Latulele to create better first-level defending, to help Edmonds be free to run and hit. Other people are saying the gap integrity is not consistent enough, and that's forcing Edmonds to cover up for some other people's mistakes at the second level, and that's why he's late to tackles. What have you seen from those two players specifically?
I can't believe you just asked me that, Chris, because I'm going to read. I take really copious notes when I watch these games. So here's two things I typed back-to-back watching the Bills tape. I said, Bills D-tackle struggle to control, stalemate, displace, and win at the point of attack in the run game. They did not make plays at the line of scrimmage. And Oliver fits right into that. And the second thing I typed was, my sense watching the tape was that Edmonds did not have a strong game. He was blocked too often on run plays. He did not read and avoid to be in position to make plays or physically defeat blocks. So I think what you just said is fair. Certainly in this game, that's certainly been true of Oliver throughout the season. And in fact, I think their D-line, their D-tackles in particular, to me, have really struggled to control the point of attack in the run game. And I think that's something that they need to get a handle on during the bye week as well.
One of the conversations we've had is this. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up real quick, Steve, just with respect to switching gaps. If you have a gap swap, can you just kind of break that down so fans can kind of understand what's involved there between a defensive lineman and maybe a linebacker?
Well, and that all depends then on how you map out your fronts. Sometimes you just play it straight, and the linebacker, there's only a certain number of gaps, as you guys know. Right. So in a run defense, everybody has a gap. That's what they call gap integrity. Now, you can switch gaps. So in other words, a defensive lineman can slant and go from one gap to another gap, and then the linebacker behind him takes the initial gap that the defensive lineman might have been lined up in. So all that stuff, we just spoke about the zone run game and how there has to be synchronization with offensive linemen. There has to be synchronization as well with your defensive line and your linebackers, whether they're playing it straight up and they've got clearly defined gaps that stay the same, or whether there's switching of gaps. But keep one thing in mind, and this is where teams struggle. Gaps are fluid when the ball is snapped, because you can have gaps, but then the offense runs a play, and then gaps become fluid. You've got to move your gaps with the play. So, if it's a zone run, you're not just saying, okay, I've got this gap and I'm staying right here. And that's where a lot of teams get into trouble. I learned this from a defensive coordinator who's since passed away, who coached for 50 years, named Rod Rust. I'm sure you've heard of him. He used to come watch tape with me, and he taught me so much about defense. And he explained the whole concept of gap fluidity and how that can really, at times, screw up the defensive lines and linebackers.
One of the things that the defense has, one of the guys who have played better than probably they did a year ago, maybe the few guys defensively for the Bills, have been Jordan Poyer. Got a ton of tackles, got a couple of sacks, got a couple of interceptions. He has really elevated his game, and perhaps it's a good thing he has, because of the fact that up front things have changed. So what about Poyer, and how do Poyer and Hyde and those guys give us an insight as to how they're playing?
I love Jordan Poyer's tape. Love his tape. I think he plays down in the box more than Hyde, but they are interchangeable players. My guess is that's all based on the front. I'm sure Leslie Frazier would say that. It's all based on the front as to who plays down and who plays on the back end when they're in single high safety. But it seems to me, just from watching without charting, that Poyer plays down in the box more, and he's extremely versatile. See, I think he's a complete safety. And it's funny. You watch tape, and you know this, Steve, when you watch tape, and you see things, and then you make a statement that the fan who doesn't watch tape thinks is bold and controversial. I think Jordan Poyer is a better player than Jamal Adams. I think Jordan Poyer is a very complete safety. He can pretty much do anything. You can line him up in the box. He can play the run. He can blitz. He can play on the back end. He's incredibly savvy and aware. I think he's, again, I'm not a list guy, so I don't sit here and rank players, 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. But to me, there can't be many more safeties playing better than Jordan Poyer is right now.
Last one for me, Greg, is the rookie 7th-round pick who has been thrust into the lineup a couple of times this season for them at the cornerback position, had to be put into the starting lineup this week because of guys going on the COVID reserve list. Dane Jackson, he's played in 4 games, Greg. He's had to start 2 of them, and he's got an interception and a fumble recovery in those 2 starts. And I thought his coverage was pretty darn good. I mean, I remember distinctly a play in the end zone where he's covering Hopkins, and he broke that up. So I know there isn't a lot of tape on him, but just your initial thoughts on the rookie Dane Jackson.
Well, it's funny you mention that because this was a game. See, as you guys know, Tre'Davious White has predominantly been the boundary corner. They've not necessarily used him as a matchup corner much of this year. This game, they matched him up more. But here's the play you were speaking about. This game, they matched him up more to Hopkins. But there were snaps where Jackson was matched man-to-man on Hopkins, and the play we just saw in the end zone was a great example of that. They let him go one-on-one with no help at all on what they knew was going to be a throw to Hopkins. I actually think he's played well. Now, I don't know what their plan is when I guess Wallace and Norman are on the COVID list, so I don't know what their plan is after the bye, assuming both guys come back. But I agree with you, Chris. I think Jackson's tape has been pretty good.
Well, Greg, last thing for me, as this season rolls to a close, and we get closer and closer to the end of it, and these the divisions tighten up, is there a team that you have seen on tape that has set from where they started or where they're headed with an extra playoff team that maybe will come out of nowhere, maybe to get into the playoffs or maybe win a division, that kind of thing?
Well, just to stay in your division, I think the Dolphins are fascinating. And, of course, everybody wants to talk about Tua, but I think their defense is really fascinating right now. And the way that Brian Flores has decided to use pressure schemes, the way he's decided to use zero blitz, the way he's lined up now in amoeba fronts, and you don't know who's coming and who's dropping out. This week, 4 times, I believe, he lined up with 8 defensive backs on the field on 3rd down. They're a fascinating team to watch. And 2 is a ball distributor. Their offense is kind of efficient. It's not necessarily explosive, but their defense is really fascinating and fun to watch for someone like me who loves all the tactical elements of the game. So they're one of those really intriguing teams going forward. And I think that they're a team to watch.
Yeah, and they may be facing backup quarterbacks in each of their next 2 games, so that defense may get even more impressive in the next couple of weeks.
Did they announce in Denver that Locke's not going?
It's not looking good for him. I saw that as early as this morning. So it's looking more and more like it'll be ripping for them. And then the next week, who knows if it's going to be Darnold yet. Flacco's playing this week. We'll have to see about next week. But the schedule is pretty soft the next 3 weeks for Miami, so they might be breathing down Buffalo's neck here by the time they get back from the bye.
They could easily end up, and again, any given Sunday, we know that, but they could be 9-3 after the next 3 weeks.
Right. Greg, we're out of time, but thanks for giving us some of yours. We appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.